Kentucky basketball is continuing to hit the recruiting trail hard, and they are in hot pursuit of what may very well be the best point guard in next year's class.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be discussing Mikel Brown Jr., a five-star point guard in next year's class that has set an official visit with the Kentucky Wildcats. What do we know about him? What do we know about his interest in the Cats? Also on today's episode, going to be taking a look at the latest Bracketology released from ESPN. Joel and Artie back at it again, and to wrap up the show, we're going to talk about Kentucky's 31-0 win over Southern Miss. Game limited due to a lightning delay. They called it with about 9 minutes left in the third quarter, but we've still got tons to dive into. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms, and if you are watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the show, and if you are listening on podcast, I would also appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate GM. Ultimate College Football Head Coach is a brand new mobile game that is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. You can use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Begin your coaching legacy today. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. Kentucky basketball in hot pursuit of a five-star point guard, Mikel Brown Jr., 6'3", 165-pound guard in next year's class, rated as a five-star according to On3, number 12 overall player. In case you did not remember, Jasper Johnson, who Kentucky is looking to hopefully get a commitment from this Thursday. He's the number 11 player in the 2025 class, according to On3. So the number 11 and number 12 player here in Brown Jr., number 2 point guard, and number 3 player out of the state of Florida. Every single recruiting website online has Mikel Brown Jr. rated as a five-star, except for On3, who in their composite ratings obviously has him as a five-star according to the average, but their individual ratings has him as the number 15 overall player, number 2 point guard, number 2 player in the state of Florida. What do we know about Mikel Brown Jr.? Well, he has set an official visit to Kentucky. According to KSR, he has set an official visit for September 27th through September 29th, according to KSR Plus. The 6'3", 165-pound guard from DME Academy in Daytona Beach, Florida, has already taken official visits to Alabama, Ole Miss, and Providence. He also has set an official visit to Indiana during the weekend of September 13th. According to KSR, schools like Louisville and Texas have been in contact about upcoming visits. Meanwhile, Alabama, Ole Miss, Villanova, and Illinois also want to get him on campus. This is, just based off of watching his film, one of the best point guards in next year's class. He is a very solid team player. There have been several prospects here that we've talked about recently on the show, and we've kind of described them as cogs in the wheel for the Mark Pope system. There have been guys that are really, really good at distributing. There have been guys that are really good at rebounding, guys that are really good at scoring, but at the end of the day, you can kind of see how they fit into this high-tempo three-point shooting offense that Mark Pope wants to run, and you really start to get excited about them as individuals. Mikel has continued to emphasize as a point guard that he wants to be a leader and wants to run an offense. He's also emphasized, obviously, that all aspects of his game are college ready, but he wants to lead his team. He said, "I'm just a really good point guard who always wants to lead his team. If you need me to make plays, I can make plays. If you need me to score, I can score. I have all the aspects as far as offense and defense. I can guard the other point guard and disrupt their offense as well." And if you go and watch his highlights, there is about a 25-minute video online of him playing high school basketball for OTE. He is just a smooth operator. He can handle the ball with ease. He seems calm, cool, and collected out there. And he's not just scoring. These are not just clips of him going out there and scoring the basketball. He is running the offense. And when you talk about Mark Pope and you talk about his system and kind of what he wants to bring to the table, obviously there are multiple ways to get the offense initiated outside of the point guard running sets. We know how involved the center is when it comes to running different actions and actually passing the basketball. We'll get to see a lot of that from Amari Williams this upcoming season, but Mikel is just really, really smooth out there, running different sets, controlling things, getting to his spots as well. He doesn't necessarily describe himself as a score-first guard, but you absolutely see the scoring in him when it comes to his shot selection, his actual form. It's all very smooth. I love it. It looks like he's absolutely ready to play college ball right now, which is crazy to say about a lot of different prospects. There are some guys that are raw, but this is somebody that's similar to latest Kentucky commit Malachi Marino, and that it looks like he has a very high ceiling. Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot of pull here from different schools in Florida, Alabama, Ole Miss, Providence, different teams that I mentioned already. Louisville, Texas, also involved. This is going to be a very competitive race for one of the best point guards in the country, but you understand very quickly kind of how he fits into Mark Pope and what he wants to do on offense. And defensively, I really like that there's a guard out here that is ranked so highly that does put an emphasis on being able to play defense and disrupt the other team as well. The quote that he had about Mark Pope, according to KSR, he said, Mark Pope said, "I'm one of the players who can fit in his system and fit what he's trying to accomplish in winning a championship here." You'll note that there, where Mark Pope consistently, Jasper Johnson, Malachi Marino, Mikel Brown, any other player that has mentioned Mark Pope having a conversation with them, what have they noted? Kentucky, the pitch is you are going to be a contributor on a championship winning team. That is something Mark Pope has continued to emphasize. He understands the assignment. He knows what needs to be done at Kentucky. Mikel Brown Jr. finished. He said he thinks I'm the best fit for his program. It was a great conversation. We'll continue to monitor Mikel Brown Jr., kind of see where his recruitment goes. According to the RPM, the recruiting prediction machine over on On3, UCF has an 18.6% chance of landing him. Alabama has 16.3% chance. Ole Miss 10.6% chance, and then Kentucky in fourth at 8.8%. It doesn't really matter until he gets all of his official visits underneath, past him to kind of really figure out where he's going to end up going to college. But I really do think Kentucky is in a great spot here off the jump with a player that I think fits them perfectly, would pair so well, I think, with a player like Jasper Johnson, who is score first, and Malachi Marino, who again has a very high ceiling. So let me know what you think about Mikel Brown Jr., the 5-star prospect, in the comments below. Going to keep it pushing here, talking about Kentucky and their bracketology. Before we dive into that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Want to take a moment to give you guys a heads up on a brand new mobile game that I think you are going to love as much as I do. Ultimate College Football Head Coach. In this amazing game and simulation, you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. Can you actually imagine, instead of just being on the sidelines watching the team, being the head coach of the Kentucky Wildcats? Well, I certainly can. I've been using this app for a few weeks now, and it has been a blast to dive into the nitty-gritty, the recruiting, the investment, the scheme. You can actually go in the game and create your own offense, and you can actually run whatever you want during the simulations of the games. It's super fun. Recruiting players, hiring staff, overseeing training camps, handling school scholarships. You can control every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. Will you be able to handle the pressure? So far, I have been able to. You, of course, have a special offer from us here at Locked On. You can use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk, as it will get your team off to a strong start. To download the game, just visit ultimate-college-cfb.com. That's ultimate-cfb.com, or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Begin your coaching legacy today. All right, continuing along here on the Tuesday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Really appreciate you guys checking out the show today. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, I would greatly appreciate it if you did so. And if you cannot see, ladies and gentlemen, we are in a new studio. That's right. Now, we've got some different things that we're going to be adding over the course of the next couple of weeks, just little details here and there. This is not the final product that you're going to be seeing from here on out. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on podcast, first of all, thank you so much for listening on podcast. Drop a review if you want to tell us what you think about the show. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can also leave any questions, comments, concerns there as well. But new studio, really excited here, guys, to kind of move into a new era of Locked On Kentucky, just a couple of months away from year 3 with you guys. And I thank you so much for watching and listening. I've got some interesting news here for you with ESPN's latest Bracketology. In case you have not seen, Joe Lunardi is at it again. He is releasing different updates to the Bracketology as we wade through the summer and we get into the actual fall here. Of course, things kind of getting cooler. It's my favorite time of year. College football's back. We're going to be breaking down Kentucky versus Southern Miss in just a second, but we've got Bracketology. Ladies and gentlemen, Kentucky has not changed. Point blank. Full stop. I don't know how they've not changed, especially considering the moves that they have made since Joe last updated this. They have completed their roster. They have practiced together. They beat the snot out of La Familia, which was a Final Four team in the TBT. Everything is pointing in the right direction for Kentucky. This is going to be, the identity is forming. It's going to be very clear. This is a score-first, high-energy, passionate team. They love the game, they love each other, and they love what Pope is going to have them do on the court. Everybody's going to have fun with this one, I think. All signs point to them being higher than the seed that Joe Lunardi currently has them at, which is a 6 seed in the East region. Now, in case you have not seen Bracketology, in case you've not seen the sites that these different games are going to occur at, as it turns out, there's a decent portion of this tournament that's going to be played in Lexington. It's going to be played in Rupp Arena. Now, obviously, that would be a huge advantage to Kentucky in the first couple of rounds if they were able to land in the Lexington Regional. But, of course, they'd have to be a pretty high seed, if I'm not mistaken, to end up actually getting there. They are right now a 6th seed in the East region, which will end in Newark, New Jersey. But they are a 6th seed starting out in Milwaukee. And that may not necessarily be the most favorable draw on the planet, depending on who your 11 seed is that you match up with. But the 2 teams that they have projected right now in Villanova and Pittsburgh, I mean, I think those are 2 probably more physical teams that may give Kentucky some matchup problems. But as it stands today, I think Kentucky's going to end up getting a higher seed than this. I think they're going to find a way to win some of these big-time games. We talked about it with Andy Patton, the host of Locked On College Basketball recently. I think Kentucky is really going to shock some people, especially early on in the season. Now, does that mean they're going to win every single game? No, but what's the most important thing when it comes to discussing NCAA tournament, resume, etc.? It's about your wins, your quad 1 victories. I believe Kentucky, with the opportunities that they have, Duke, Gonzaga, Clemson, Ohio State, Louisville, I think they're going to make some statements. Again, that doesn't mean they're going to full clean sweep all 5 of those games, but I think that they're going to be able to get the majority of them, get some of those quad 1 wins that they desperately need for their resume. And honestly, I think they start off their SEC slate with a bang. Now, we've discussed that on a recent episode. We actually put out some social media content about this, explaining why I really do think the SEC is incredible this year. But offensively, there are some concerns. There are some questions as to whether or not some teams will be able to keep up with others. Yes, there's an infusion of transfer portal talent, but does that really mean as much as we project it to on paper right now? I don't necessarily know if it does or if it doesn't. We really do just have to see these teams play. But as it stands today, I think Kentucky's going to be able to outscore a lot of different teams in the SEC, and that will end up leading to them picking up some solid road wins, adding to that quad 1 resume. They are better, in my opinion, than a 6 seed in Mark Pope's first year. And I know that there's going to be a lot of pushback. There's going to be the comments and the concerns that say, well, Pope's never won an NCAA tournament game. He's never really taken a team higher than where Kentucky is currently seeded or projected to be seeded. And I understand all of that. This is different. This is a roster that, sure, is not perfect, and it's not exactly the Pope's liking, because if it was, then he'd be able to get essentially any player in the country, recruits or not, and kind of put this together in a different way. But it's the best that this staff could have possibly done, period, with what they had to work with, I should say. They are going to be good. They're going to be good. This team is better than people currently think it is, in my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Higher than a 6 seed, lower than a 6 seed in the tournament at all? I know some of you think that in the comments for sure. You know who you are. And let me know in the comments below, though. At Locked On UK on Twitter if you want to hit me there and kind of give me your thoughts on the NCAA tournament. All right, I want to wrap up the show here in just a minute, breaking down Kentucky football's win over Southern Miss 31-0. What do we know about the Cats heading into week 2? Before we dive into that, though, I do want to tell you guys about our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. You can grab a 5 Hour Energy shot to stay alert to watch all of your favorite games over the course of the weekend. I know I tend to get pretty sleepy there towards the weekend to stay awake to watch all sorts of college football action. I can take a shot of 5 Hour Energy. If you stayed up late on Friday night to see an intense overtime game, and we know the midweek games can get a little crazy in college football, you can take a 5 Hour Energy shot then in the morning so you can start your day. Zero sugar, a convenient portable size. It's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5 Hour Energy website has flavors galore like watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, and more. There is a flavor for every single person out there. I would encourage you to try them all, and the best way to do that is if you're on the site, you have the option to build your own 12 or 24 pack. You can choose the flavors, and it's delivered right to your door. Grape's my personal favorite, but you need to try them all. I think they're all excellent. You can take 5 Hour Energy by going to 5hourenergy.com. That is the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5 Hour Energy product today. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid through September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders, so go to 5hourenergy.com today. Again, use promo code LOCKEDONCFB. All right, wrapping up the Tuesday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. New studio, new look, new vibes, new season for the Kentucky Wildcats and Mark Stoops. Let's break down Kentucky's 31-0 win over Southern Miss. Not gonna be a ton here to really dive into because we pretty much only got a half of football. In case you didn't watch it, in case you didn't see it, Kentucky's game was cut short with about 9 minutes left in the third quarter because of a lightning delay. It was getting super, super late, and both coaches mutually agreed to just go ahead and call things. 31-0, though, is the final score. Would Southern Miss ever have scored? I strongly doubt it, considering their offense was going nowhere on the ground, and Tate Rodemaker was really struggling to get anything consistent going through the air. Kentucky secondary, a little tight. I might say it's tighter than it was expected to be in terms of creating turnovers and in terms of just being in throwing windows. I was impressed with the way the defense played. Now, that's where I want to start in this game. According to ESPN and their stats, Kentucky held Southern Miss to just 0.4 yards per rush, 12 yards rushing. Really struggled to get things going on the ground. Their leading rusher had 3 carries for 10 yards. Of course, Kentucky also sort of drained the life out of the clock at different times. They were on pace to really take things over in terms of time of possession as this game went on, but Kentucky just dominated in every single facet of the game on defense. Only 126 yards passing for the Southern Miss Golden Eagles, 6.6 yards per pass. That's about 3 less than Kentucky average with Brock Vandegrift. We'll get to him later on in the show. 3 of 8 on third down were the Golden Eagles. Again, 2 interceptions thrown from Tate Rodemaker, 1 in the end zone, and I believe 1 towards midfield on tip drills, by the way. If I'm not mistaken. Kentucky just really solid in getting in the throwing windows, batting balls up, creating havoc. I thought the defense did a phenomenal job. Pop Dumas Johnson was excellent in this game. Zion Childress led the team in tackles with 4. Just a really solid game from the defense. On the offensive side of the ball, for about half of a game. Statistically, I thought things were actually pretty good. I mean, 31 points in about 2.5 quarters of action. Not that shabby, especially considering a lot of people were thinking Kentucky could possibly struggle in this matchup given their history with the Southern Miss Golden Eagles. I obviously did not hold that opinion. If you watched the preview show, you knew I thought this was going to be a blowout from the jump. 19 first downs in essentially half of a game. 3 of 5 on third down. You can see Kentucky moving the ball pretty effectively whenever they had it. 317 total yards, 169 yards passing. And I will note, I think Vandegrift would have probably gotten to 250 plus had this game played out to the fullest extent. Of course, lightning delay kept him from padding some stats. 169 yards, 12 of 18, solid completion percentage, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, brushed that aside, but 3 touchdowns. One of them was on a pop pass to Bracketology Brown. So really 2 touchdowns through the air. Kentucky was methodical and effective on the ground. Vandegrift was not perfect by no means. Obviously the pick and a couple of missed passes and kind of helter-skelter in the pocket at times. He's raw, but you can see the potential. At 6'4", 6'5", the kid's mobile. He can absolutely move around. He is not stationary there. It's nice and refreshing to see a quarterback that can go out there and run around a little bit. Kentucky 9.4 yards per attempt. There were some solid shots downfield, especially one to Dane Key. Jamori Macklin actually led the team in receiving with 66 yards. Kentucky, 6.2 yards per attempt on the ground as well. And that's actually where I want to kind of wrap this up here with the Wildcats on offense. You had Demi Sumokongbe starting at running back, and he looked great. 8 attempts, 59 yards, 7.4 yards per carry. He's been a high yards per carry guy throughout his collegiate career. A touchdown, had a long of 22. Vandegrift had 35 yards rushing. Freshman Jason Patterson averaged 7 yards per carry. Bracketology Brown had 4.7 yards per carry on a couple of pop passes, couple of sweeps, I should say. The offense clicked. You look good. You look solid against a team that I think is really going to struggle this year. And the final score and the stats would have looked way, way worse had this thing continued to play out. You've got South Carolina this week. Kentucky, a 9.5-point favorite because of just how bad the Gamecocks looked with Lenore Sellers at QB against Old Dominion. If I'm not mistaken, 19-23 was the final score there. Just a rough outing from the Gamecocks. That's going to be at home. Then you got the Bulldogs in week 3 of Georgia. It's going to be super tough. This week's going to be tough, too, because it's SEC talent. 2:30, ABC, 3:30, Eastern time. Going to be really fired up for that one. Going to have a preview episode coming out later this week. Thank you guys so much for tuning into the show. It's a new one for me here today in the studio. I'm excited to be back with you guys. Any questions, comments, concerns, you can leave those in the YouTube comments below. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at LanceDawe_, and you can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.